Hey guys, how's it going? To begin with, today you are supposed to have, and I phrase it that way purposely, turned in bids before class. I didn't check right before class. I imagine there were a few of you that maybe made that happen. But what I usually do on workshop days, I'll check the night before something is due because you guys don't turn things in early. And usually there's like nothing there. So I'll check the morning, like 6:30 in the morning to see if, because you guys, when you turn things in at night, you know, very different schedule. We're talking like 1 in the morning type stuff. So I checked, there was nothing. So what I decided to do, and I wanted to do this at some point anyway, that's true. I just couldn't really pick a moment, and the moment presented itself. There is a secondary source on Coursden. It's been there the whole time. We're going to talk about it today in lieu of bids that you may or may not have turned in. But the conversation is going to be very similar. We're going to talk about someone else's ideas about Die Hard, and we're going to see if that can start a conversation for us. And mainly, how do we use secondary sources? What the hell are we doing in this paper? Okay? So, if you would please go to Coursden. I understand you may have to log into that. It might take you a second. Once you get there, you're going to Unit 3, which is where we've been for the past little while, a couple weeks. And it's a few spots below the prompt for the paper. It's by a guy named Breihan. It's called Die Hard Humanized and Perfected, the Action Movie. It's just a PDF that's on Coursden. Just take a minute and get to that, please. It's in the same little module as the prompt. Unit 3, like if you see the paper prompt, it's a couple spots below that. It's by a guy named Breihan, I think is how you pronounce his name. If you scroll through that very quickly, because I know you're excited to read this, it's single-spaced. It's not even 3 pages, right? So it's short. This will only take you 5-ish minutes to read. Some other things to know about it. This is what's known as a popular source. I found it on Google. I'm using my memory here, but I believe all I looked up was Die Hard and masculinity, which is something that you could for sure use yourselves. When I performed that search this morning, just to confirm my memory, I not only found this article eventually, it's a couple years old, but I found a bunch of new stuff. Some of them probably pretty good, some of them less good, just judging by the titles, which is how we talked about research last time, okay? But based upon that, just like I talked to you about with Google, you can dive into those articles, you can skim them, and I mean that, skim them. You don't have to read the whole thing. Some of these can be long. Skim the thing. And if you start to find interesting ideas, or you just, oh yeah, that's an interesting point, but then you can start reading paragraphs, you can dive into an article. Save yourself some time at the front end when it comes to research, okay? The other thing I want you to know about this article, it's a good one, I think. I'm bringing it to your attention because it is a popular article, so it's not from Galileo, but I think it works. It's an example of an article that works. Articles that will not work. When we're speaking of popular articles, that's anything on the internet, that's anything that's not scholarly, okay? I don't know. I say this all the time in different ways. You guys do, you really do. You live on a different planet from me, okay, in terms of your brain. You do, and that's okay. But the amount of times I've had people, and I'm not making this up, use like a BuzzFeed list or something for this paper. Shit like 10 times Die Hard, blah, 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 like one of those. I didn't know I would have to tell those people not to do that. So I'm telling you now, don't do that. Don't do that. What? A list? What makes this article useful for our purposes? And this is what we're going to talk about, okay? It makes arguments. The guy writing it has ideas about the movie that you may agree or disagree with, okay? But they are arguments, and that's the thing we can investigate. That's the thing we can converse with in our papers. Conversely, with a list article, they're called listicles, by the way, that's just, oh, look, here's another scene where a thing happened. Like, there's no argument usually. And even if there is, it's normally kind of crap. So please don't do those. But all that is to say, you can use Google for this paper. That's another tool you have if you want. I would still look at Galileo. There's probably some smart stuff on there about Die Hard. But the other cool thing about a popular source, most of the time, way easier to read. Not only because they're shorter, right? But also because it's not written by a guy strictly for guys like me. I was reading poetry earlier today for fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, different, not okay. But this is for normal people. You might have something you can dig into here. With that in mind, I want you to read over it, but the only thing I want you to keep in the back of your head as you read, this is a nice little warm-up exercise. I want you to try to pull out at least 2 quotations for me out of 3 pages. Think about why we quote. We're not even going to review it. I know you know it. That can come back to bite me, but we'll see. 2 quotations. Write them down or find some way to remember them. We're going to talk about it. Go for it. What did you guys come up with? Any quotation at all? Yes?
So the first one that I saw was in the beginning, it said there was a certain way these movies look, furnished, steel, looking sweat, ultra muscles.
Mm-hmm.
That couldn't possibly exist without chemical enhancement.
What in particular, we'll start most of these this way. What in particular drew you to that quotation, do you think?
The furnished, steel, gleaming sweat, and bulging muscles, like how, and then it drew in the chemical enhancement of things and how that's the stereotypical masculine way of people viewing, like.
Well, especially in the 80s, right? Part of his point in the paragraph is we've always kind of had these stereotypes, but in the 80s, we touched on this last time, I believe, everything is just bigger and better and glitzier and sort of to the nth degree. I guess I'll ask this now. When we quote, why do we quote? Oh. So in terms of this quotation, and you may have to use your memory, but you can also find it there in the first paragraph. Burnished steel, gleaming sweat, bulging muscles that couldn't possibly exist without chemical enhancement. If we were going to dig into the language of that quotation, what's some of the language we'd almost for sure want to consider? What's some of the most significant, some of the most interesting language in that quotation?
Burnished steel, gleaming sweat, bulging muscles. I think are like.
I so thought you were about to read the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I was just trying to.
Okay.
Maybe chemical enhancement.
Yes. I was so worried you weren't going to say that. Why? Why is it interesting to say that? As opposed to, not that we can't talk about the other material, we should, but didn't you just kind of pretty succinctly sum up what burnished steel, gleaming sweat, bulging muscles is doing? Like, we get that. We could do that in a sentence. Chemical enhancement, what is that?
It's like saying that they're so big and so muscular that you can't get that big without doing steroids pretty much.
It's not natural.
Yeah.
They're taking drugs to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's think about that for a second. So, denotatively, yeah? Denotatively is the dictionary definition. What does this author literally mean by chemical enhancement? He's talking about steroids. Connotatively, though, there's all kinds of associations we have with that idea, with that observation. He's saying all the 80s movies, and by the way, I don't know how many you've seen, probably not very many. I grew up on these. I grew up on Jean-Claude Van Damme, which is weird. It's a weird way to grow up. His mullet is outstanding. All of the dudes are jacked in ways that are unfathomable. Like it can't be normal. Like they must have back issues. Like it can't. Nothing is right. They don't even look like people necessarily. Do you know what I mean? Like Schwarzenegger in his heyday is bananas. Okay? What's the association we have with, I mean, you gave us the term, I think, roided up. Like, what do we think about that idea, or a person who maybe looks like that, or
Like, what do you, I'm confused what you're asking. Like, you asked, what would that person be like, or?
We'll go back for 1 second. I'll try to give you an example, and we'll walk back into this. There's got to be a better example than this. I can't think of one right now. Denotatively, the two things I'm about to say to you mean the same thing, okay? My boys are supposed to go to bed on a school night at 8 o'clock. So I will say, hey guys, you need to brush teeth, get ready for bed. That happens at 8 o'clock. 8:30 rolls around, and they're still running in the hallways and doing all the shit they do. I've been known to have a temper, and I will say a thing like, go the fuck to bed. Those mean, denotatively, the same thing. Connotatively, time to get ready for bed and go the fuck to bed, those have different connotations.
One is like the better way of saying it, the other one's like, okay, I'm done with your shit.
It communicates frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like right when you say the second half, they're like, oh crap. Like,
You would think so, but you'd be wrong. But yeah. Well, they don't really pick up on connotation yet.
So it's like same definition, different tone.
Tone is for sure a factor a lot of the time. I mean, and we could go down that road a little bit, because saying they're on steroids even reads differently from chemical enhancement, right? That's a funny way to put it. I think he's kind of making a joke there by saying that. That'd be worth considering. But let's start with steroids, and then maybe we can get to the tone of it, that it's a joke. What's the association we have with saying, obviously, all these guys were on steroids, you know? Like,
That they're huge.
they're huge. Why?
Because they lift weights.
And they take drugs.
What is it? What do you mean?
They inject themselves with drugs.
When you think of chemical enhancement, you think of like in the lab somewhere. Kind of like the
Science-y?
you think
Yeah.
like the scene in the Russian training in Rocky IV, where he
Yeah.
does a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's in a
Oh,
lab.
yeah. Where the Russian, they got him all
He's
these.
He's working hard. He's not just sticking a needle in his ass all day. Like,
He doesn't even. He looks a little bit robotic.
Yeah.
Not only in his like I am Dolph Lundgren face, but in the yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I got from it like it's saying like without it, they wouldn't be a hero. Like it's
You could go that far. All right, but you're to the point you're making your own argument. Wait, no, that's okay. We're gonna put that down here. Sort of.
Which it also says in that same paragraph, nothing like real life. Which would go, I feel like that could tie back into the chemical enhancement, because it's not real life. Real life would be, like only certain people would look like that. Which could tie back into like certain people that look like that use steroids to make themselves look heroic.
Good. And he's implying this, but to say it plainly, you can argue that's kind of you bringing that too. To recap, this is the denotation. One connotation, or maybe two kind of related connotations. It's unnatural. They're more than human, right? They're using this, it's enhancement. It's not just chemicals, it's not just steroids, they're enhanced. So we take these things about being human beings and probably lifting weights all day, but we take it up another notch. Right? One argument that presents itself is this is what you have to do to be an 80s hero. You have to be chemically enhanced. Just to look the part. Yeah? Sure. Now here again, we have to go back a little bit and think about, well, when we did this last time, maybe if I was more chemically enhanced, that wouldn't have been so difficult. If you have to do this, then how are we defining a hero in this era? They got to be more. You can't just say jacked. They got to be more than jacked, right? Like, what is that to look like that?
Like artificially, like, well, not artificially, but like,
You need to look enough like a person that we could get behind you. But yeah.
Way above the average person physically.
Well, it's leaps and bounds, right?
Yeah, like I mean, like not like that's not just like way above, like
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. What'd you have?
A metahuman.
A metahuman. We got slightly better words for that, but like akin to a superhero, akin to a god type of thing. If you look up Arnold Schwarzenegger in Conan, by the way, or in Commando, he leaned up for Commando, by the way, and he's on the box art. You can see him. He's shredded, and he lost weight for that role, so he wasn't so. They came back and told him he was too ripped in Conan. You know what I'm saying? Like it's.
I was gonna say he must have been on a boat in Conan.
Well, he was Mr. Universe. He was a legit bodybuilder, so it was, you know. But I'm gonna use that language because I like it. And we talked about this last time. I mean, like Greek gods, like pantheon shit. Okay. What might be a problem if all your heroes are gods, basically? Like physical freaks. Yeah.
You can't relate.
They have nothing to do with this guy. Can't. Or go to the gym every day. Yeah, and come out looking like fucking 1983 Arnold Schwarzenegger. Good luck. Good luck. Yeah. Conversely, because that's part of his point here in the first paragraph, right? Die Hard was really a hallmark moment, changed that, made it very different. Bruce Willis, he's in decent shape. That's all you can really say about the guy. He's in decent shape, but it's like, what can he do? 10 pull-ups, something like that.
He looks like an average.
Yeah,
person.
like he's in well enough shape to maybe make it believable that he's doing the things he's doing,
Yeah.
but not so insane that he doesn't even seem like a person.
Like that's like a real like body physique that a New York cop would have. Like
Well,
I mean-
in our wildest dreams, perhaps. You know, it's like. But anyway, I take your point. All right, let's try this on for just a second. This, by the way, this is the analysis you would do on the page when it came to this quotation from Breihan, right? And for context, what? He's basically just when Breihan describes right? That's how he basically describes prototypical 80s action heroes. And you could give us a little more in the quotation if you wanted to. These are notes, right? This is the analysis we're doing based off of that. I summed it up like this. You guys actually had some pretty solid ways to sum it up yourselves, so that this is just the language I used, okay? What that has us talking about now, because all of this has to somehow be in service of an argument about the movie, okay? Bruce Willis's character is very much not that, okay? If we want to try to make an argument, because we cannot argue, by the way, Bruce Willis is not that. Does anybody know why?
because that's like taking the evidence and just being like it's
A little bit,
evidence
yeah.
for yourself else.
What kind of an argument is it to say Bruce Willis is not this? Is it an argument worth making?
Well, it does. Is it bad to like add another quote? Because I did find a quote that could possibly back that, like what you're asking, how he's not that.
No, we're not doing that.
Okay.
Slow down. Why? This is an important point. That's what I'm stressing here. Why can't we argue that Bruce Willis is not that? Yeah.
Because you're saying that he's like not a hero?
No. Because it's banal. Because it's obvious. And I say that to say you will fall into this trap because your brain will go, ooh wee, an argument. It is an argument. It is an argument to say, well, he's not that. Is it one that any of you or anyone who's ever seen the movie would disagree with? No. Because it's apparent. Because you have eyes that work. right? What that's going to translate to in your paper, if you end up trying to make a banal argument, is you won't have anything to say because it is obvious. But the point I'm making here is we can start there. We can go to a scene that helps us think about the fact that Bruce Willis is not this, okay? And in investigating that scene, we might be able to come up with an actual argument. So let's think about this. There's got to be scores of them in the film that help us think about the idea that John McClane is not chemically enhanced. There's all kinds of ways you can take that in the movie. What do you guys think?
Well, he's not fighting a predator. He's fighting very real.
Well, but hey, dude, I would argue the mini climax before he goes and takes down Hans, when he's fighting fucking Carl in the it's just a room, but for some reason it feels cold to me for no reason, and there's chains again for no reason. Like it.
I guess he's still not on the same scale as like the Russian or
I mean, yes and no, yeah. But the fight with Carl, I'm scared when I'm watching. We were talking before about horror movies. I'm in the whole time. I'm like, oh shit. Like I'm a little bit during the fight. I just don't know if that's a great scene because the fact that he takes that guy down. Well, you could consider. We might be able to think of it this way. Let's think of it this way. Carl. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stop doing that. Is, as Breihan points out, kind of the most expected, the most typical 80s action character in the movie, right? He's got a comically large gun for no reason. He looks like a Viking, you know? And his clothes, I think, kind of hide it because they all kind of dress well. But he's clearly jacked. Like, he's not like everybody else in the movie, physically. McClane's not like that. Doesn't look like that guy at all. I don't have time to bring it up, but I'm pretty sure in the scene it's pretty evident that Carl is a good 6 inches taller than McClane. You know, he's just so much more physically imposing than McClane is. So one idea that immediately presents itself is our banal claim, which is, well, he's not that. Because you see Carl, and Carl's pretty close to that in the movie, and McClane's not. Done. Anything else we can think about in the scene? Is there anything else about that scene that might be interesting or significant in the way we've talked about it these past couple classes? For instance, it's kind of weird. John McClane is an everyman. Breihan says that. We talked about that last time. Carl should probably destroy him, right? Like, we can agree that it's a little weird that he doesn't break McClane in half, Bane style. So, how does McClane win? How's it even possible that he wins? We can start literally. Does anybody remember literally how he takes this guy down in the scene? He gets him in chains, and and all of a sudden it's like big strong man ain't shit without an airway, right? Like it's, yeah. What's that about?
Well, he uses his environment.
He does.
He's but it's the whole fight just feels very like, you know, messy. It's like Carl's a little bit more like you said. He knows
Yeah.
what he's doing. He's a little bit more punchy and kicky. McClane is just kind of like trying his best to get up all on.
Just trying to survive at a certain point, kind of like he does in the whole movie.
He's more of like, you know, he's just throwing down in his own way.
Yeah.
Probably how a cop would, you know, try and subdue somebody.
Carl's like Minch.
Yeah, I mean, again, Carl's just a big bad motherfucker.
Yeah.
I mean, I would put it this way. If there were no chains in the room, I kind of think the movie might end there. You know what I mean? Carl gets him in a headlock, and everything just kind of fades to black. That's kind of it. but he uses his environment. He's resourceful. I don't know if that's the word you're looking for or not. But what else does he use? I know, real quick, I know he literally uses a chain. Please don't say that. But like, what is he using to beat Carl? He's using his environment, but what does it take to do that, to make a move like that? He's using his brain. Yeah? And again, at least according to the definition we get at the top of the article, burnished steel, bulging muscles, gleaming sweat, I believe it was, there's no mention in there of,
Like thinking.
yeah.
It's just all about them.
So this is, we could start to argue, an addition to or an alteration to that model. It's not just that he doesn't look like those guys physically, because he fucking doesn't, right? But also, it's like, well, does he add anything? Does he? And in this case, the chain is a smart move. A little cheap, maybe, but here again, I mean,
It's 1v12, so I feel like it's.
that's true too. Well, it's one we won in that scene, but yeah, point taken. Okay, so again, to be clear, we're not just talking about the entire scene. That would be insane. We're talking about the moment between him and Carl when he gets to the chain, wraps him up. Okay, that's our evidence. In chains. Okay. Our immediate, maybe big idea, and I'm out of room, so we might just have to talk about this mostly, is that he's using his brain here, right? So what? The question is always, so what? Why does it matter that he's using his brain?
Because like that's not really normal. Like I guess it's normal, but like it's not really like been seen a lot in action.
It's new at this point, for sure. Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking like everybody's brain, but not
Ah, this is something, and again, you don't know maybe in the moment, but it's possible. It's possible that you're squaring off with Carl and you're like, it's not going well. And you're like, oh, fuck this guy with a chain. Right? Like, you could do that. You could make that move in here. Yes. It's a tool set we can access. We could do that. So now all of a sudden, we're not just talking about that he's much less physically imposing, and we're not even just talking about that this is a new model, but we're defining a specific characteristic of what that new model is, which is this sort of capacity for resourcefulness, think on your feet, use your environment as any and all of that. But these are things we could do.
I was thinking more logically in being a human being, whereas like in hero movies, they don't have to think that way because they more so have the strength to like,
They don't need that.
yeah.
They don't need
like,
that shit.
They can take over easily without. I don't know what point I'm trying
They would
like,
never almost
since
like
he's a human being, he doesn't have the same heroic, like,
He's not a god.
yeah.
Arnold would have to rely on brains.
that's what I'm saying. They would never even been in that situation like that.
Exactly.
That fight would have been over a long time.
Well, the fight would still be cool,
Yeah.
but it'd be like a Carl versus a Carl. Well, a slightly stronger Carl, right? And it'd be epic, but one of them would come out and be like, "Not a big deal." But so we're talking about frailty, which is also a tool set we can access. I stubbed my toe this morning. Took me down. Took me down. Right? That's something we can access. That's something that all of this, at least right now, seems to be possibly, if this is our body paragraph, we have a couple more in line with this. We're building toward a thesis about relating to this character. But again, importantly, we're not just writing like 3 or so body paragraphs about all the ways we can relate to him. We're being very specific. In this case, we started with tool set we can access, but we actually ended up with frailty. He's not perfect. He's not physically invincible. He could die, potentially, in that scene with Carl. And at the end of the scene, you think Carl has died. But then, interestingly, of course, Carl does not, because he is one of these. They don't die.
Yeah, I really want to know how he got out of that.
Because it's 80s, because it's bullshit. That's what it is. That's what this is. This is bullshit.
Wasn't he in a body bag? I've always kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get they hadn't zipped it all the way.
Yeah, like you see him kind of shrug something.
He kind of forces his arm out, and then my actual favorite part, not him coming back from the dead, him having his gun.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
They put him in the put his giant fucking gun in there with him.
just in case.
Yeah, I don't know.
As
That-
a tribute, you know.
That is odd. We can think. Well, I want to talk about another idea, but for instance, what you guys have just made a great point. If we were writing this paper, first of all, generally I would try to start with the primary text. You don't always have to do that, but it's usually a good idea, and you would kind of build back to this, right? But this is fine too. This is great. We started here, talked about that. That got us to the scene, got us to that specific moment, and then we're making our own argument. This is a complete body paragraph. But then based on that, a couple of you immediately went to, let's think more about Carl. Because he's very much what Willis is not. I got to start saying McLean. You could argue that's what McLean is literally fighting against. It's also interesting that McLean doesn't technically beat him. Like, he overcomes him, but only enough to get out of the fight, right? We find out later he doesn't beat him. What beats him? A fucking magnum to the face or something, right? Like, it's
In the what's his name now?
Al. Yeah, it takes him out. That's a whole other paragraph or two. Maybe a paragraph on Carl and what he represents and why he, you could argue, can't be beaten by McLean, which is interesting. And then another paragraph about Al and why Al can beat him now. Gun seems pretty important. But is that, I'm honestly asking, and you would have to write this to figure it out. We're not going to do that right now. We don't have time. But all of a sudden, that's 3 paragraphs right now, like just based off of what we've started to do here. Okay? But I want to try a couple more. What time is it, by the way? I'm so scared.
11:41.
Okay. Can somebody find this? Oh, I wanted to point this out, but we'll do a different one. In that first paragraph, I was surprised you didn't hit me with bodybuilder's fever dream.
Yeah, that was gonna be mine.
That is a wild thing to say.
I love the one where it's like talking about this would be like a bodybuilder's fever dream if they done a mountain blow.
Yeah.
Specifically the mountain blow.
That's a wild quotation. But it's similar to what we pulled. So, but it's also connotatively maybe doing some other things as well. Okay. Let's try to find us another quotation here. Anything at all.
From that same.
Different paragraph maybe. But yeah, same article.
One part it said, well put together human being.
I mean, that kind of literally means what it says, right?
Yeah.
Like, I understand why, but it's, you know.
It's like he's not really a well put together human being, going based off of the beginning of the story and how he's having issues with his wife and everything.
Well, but I want to say, if I remember the quotation you're talking about, this is Breihan talking about McLean physically, right? Like, he's in like okay shape, he's in decent shape.
Yeah.
Let's try to talk about something else. I want to give you guys some options, and that's going to be pretty similar to what we talked about.
I had there's an almost video game about Fury, the way the story plays out.
That's interesting, and that is it's on the top of the 3rd page. If yours broke down like mine, which I think it did. It's talking about, well, let's get it up on the board first. What's he describing here? What's our context? like one by one.
Yeah.
Usually, like it feels. If you look at it this way, it kind of feels like levels in a video game. Level 2 is when he takes out the 3 guys in the office where Takagi got killed. You know what I'm saying? Like it feels like Carl's a mini boss, if you're familiar with the phrase. A little bit. So describing the sort of pacing and logic of the film's action sequences. Primarily, I think that's what he's talking about, right? We're going to try. This is a harder quotation, but we can maybe do it. Video game-like purity. What does that even mean, like denotatively? How would we put that in words?
Well, video games are more straightforward.
Okay.
You have like, go here, kill this guy, finish the level.
You know what pisses me off about modern games? Because I'm a dad, I don't have time to fuck around. When they're not what you're describing, which is easily defined. Where am I supposed to go, dog? What am I supposed to do? Give me a little marker. Let me know. I don't want to search. I search all day. That's real life. I'm not doing that. That's why when I'm playing games, right? Yeah. We know who the bad guys are. We usually know where they are. Or at the very least, we know what McClane has to overcome. The camera work is really good about highlighting specific aspects, like, well, I don't want to lead you guys into a scene, but there's moments where almost like you're in his head a little bit, and it's like, oh, he's looking at this, and he's looking at that, and he's doing some work, and he's going to do a thing, right? Just like you would have to do in a more pure.
I got the scene.
Okay, time out for 1 second. Hold it for 1 second. Because we have to, at the very least, consider connotations as well of this. Denotatively, easily defined. You know basically what to do, when, where to go, all that stuff. Connotation of this statement, video game-like purity. What do you think? I'd be interested to know, because some people will have different connotations for this, I think. Associations you have with a phrase like video game-like purity. First of all, I would imagine the idea of a video game being pure is kind of weird to a lot of you. Purity, I mean, like, I hope this is pretty pure type of thing.
Could it be like, it's not as gruesome as real life, or would that not be it?
Nah, I mean, not in the way he's using it, and also
Other than bro, video games are pretty crazy.
video games, even in the 80s, like that was kind of the height of moms getting really upset about like Mortal Kombat and stuff. Yeah.
It's really got to play video games to really understand.
No, that's kind of what I was worried about the quotation actually. Is it? But the great thing about connotation is these are stereotypes. These are the expectations you have. These may not even be accurate. But when you hear a term, when you hear about video games, like what do you guys picture? What do you imagine? What do you associate with video games as a hobby?
You kill a bunch of dudes.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
That's what it is, like Die Hard. It's not really kind of a lull. It seems like there's always new content.
Moves through, and that's kind of what he's talking about too, because he says it's over 2 hours long, but the way it moves is really, it's like playing a 30-hour video game, and you're like, that didn't feel like,
You don't really have time to be bored.
I didn't feel like I didn't talk to my kids all week, right? It felt like that. Yeah, true, and we might think about that a little bit, depending on the scene we pull. Connotation, though, and I'm most interested to hear from those of you who don't play video games. What are some assumptions you have about, I so don't want to call it a lifestyle, but like,
Hobby.
yeah. What do you guys think about that stuff?
Hobby could turn into a lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna direct you a little bit. Is it a good one? Is it a bad one? Is it in
I feel
between?
like if you have a good balance, it's good.
As with anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much like everything.
Those of you who don't play, what do you think? you're going to be more tapped into the connotation is why I'm directing it at you. What do you think of people who play video games? Be honest.
It's just something they like to do.
Something they like to do. That's very nice of you.
It's not really anything.
What does that mean?
I mean, it's just something that they like to do. Like,
Nah, but talk to me about the second one. What do you mean it's not really anything? What does that mean?
sorry, what?
It's what you said.
Waste of time, maybe.
No, no. I mean, like.
You're not going to hurt my feelings. It is a waste of time.
No, I'm not trying to do that.
Okay.
I didn't mean it like that.
No one, you're not going to, if anyone gets upset with you for saying that, they got problems.
Yeah.
It's something that takes place
It's
of,
just something they like to do. Like, I may like to do something that's.
Well, all right. So let me give you a metaphor, and then I'm going to come back to you. What I also like to do. I play video games more than my shit. I played Destiny before I came in today. It's fun.
That's early though.
Well, my boys get up at like 6. Anyway, when I'm not playing games, I'm doing work. I'm grading, or I'm with you guys, or I'm doing stuff. And when I'm not doing that, I'm writing poems. A lot of people will consider that a waste of time as well.
Yeah,
It's something I like to do.
it's like something to take your mind.
It's not really anything, like, just like
Yeah.
you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
That's all it
It's like a
is.
getaway from real life.
It's a vacation.
Yeah.
It's an escape. Okay.
It's like somebody going and being on Facebook all day. It's like what they do to escape from what
Yeah.
they need to be doing.
Yeah. Okay.
Stress. It's a good way to procrastinate.
Okay. So, is there a purity? Can we think about applying that idea to that description, to those associations?
When I think of that, I think of like, it's not anything but that. Like, if something's pure, it is like only one thing.
Okay. So, connotations. We kind of got more. We pushed a little bit past hobby, I think, with how we sort of described it. It started to sound like a vocation, like a calling, and that may be a little bit strong. But if we're talking about it in terms of purity, might, and I'm asking, might we be sort of also indicating that this is kind of what McLean is built for. This is kind of all he's meant to do, you know? I think we could, possibly. Think about the first 20, 30 minutes of the movie, all the times when he's trying to talk to people, or more honestly, they're trying to talk to him. And he's not, we'll say, good at it. But if somebody kicked in the door and had a gun, now, this is level 3. I've done this before. Maybe. Okay. Now what we got to do, and I don't know if that changes. Braxton, you said you had an idea. I don't know if that alters that at all. But can we think about a scene? Either one of these, or both, that might involve the idea that like the stakes, the sides, everything is easily defined.
Yeah, it doesn't change it. The scene where like they shoot the glass and there's glass on the floor, and then he's peeing back and he looks at the door and he looks back at the glass and looks at the door.
Yeah.
And he looks back at the glass and then it like cuts and like and he's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So specifically, because I think what got you there, that was a great acting job.
Can you be in the movie now?
Follow
I'm just trying to get a hotspot.
McLean's gaze.
You could play that first character, first one that gets killed.
You do your business with a gun.
No.
All right. What time is it, by the way? I know I asked.
It's like 12:50.
Okay. So what you're describing specifically, right, because it's not the whole scene, is how we follow McLean's gaze from, and I don't remember the order, you'd have to check, but like glass to door to glass, whatever, he does one of these, and in the audience you go, oh no. Because I want to say he looks at his feet too, or the camera does,
Yeah,
right?
He does.
You don't expect him to
Because it
go
points out
across.
the fact
Well, but it's kind of telling you,
he's not wearing shoes.
he's gonna have, because it's that or get your ass shot off, right? Like there's no pretty well-defined terms. But I want to start with you, and then I want to ask everybody else. What drew you to that moment specifically? Yeah.
I don't know, just because that's like, just because.
Oh, you got a reason.
I remember watching the movie and just like, if I was like in that scenario.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I was just, all that glass, like.
Sure.
It should hurt, dude. Like,
It would be terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just remembered that scene.
Okay. Well, I'll open it up to everybody else then. But if you think of something as we were talking, please chime in. Can we talk about this along any of these lines? Can we try to think about?
It is easily defined. Like you said, it's either cut up your feet or get your ass shot.
Okay, we can start there. Well, and to the point, it's defined for us. Like the way the camera works. At no point do you have to go, oh, why? Like they're shooting the glass because of this, right? You might even wonder that initially when they're doing it, but immediately the camera goes, hey, dummy, don't worry about it. This is why. And you're like, oh, shit. Yes, ma'am.
He looks down at what he has to do because he is destined to or he now feels like everything that has happened within the building is on him. Like he has to make sure that everybody gets out safe.
What?
Because an owl and everything, like he's been the one communicating with the police and everything. So he looks down at the glass as like, I've got to get across.
Maybe, but you're skipping about 7 steps. No, I mean, so help me out. How do you? Don't even worry about getting there yet. But somehow you got there from glass door, no shoes. Can you start that thought process for us? I'm just curious.
So like, he pretty much was trying to find the way on how he was going to get out of getting shot, and he was analyzing what he had going on, like the glass and everything.
Mhm.
Because that, like pretty much he had to work himself up, build himself up to crossing.
I do think you see just a split second of him like type of.
I gotta do it. Like,
Yeah. Well, you made a smart point as well, and I've forgotten it now. You said something about he's running. Importantly, like I want to say his gun runs out of bullets. Is that right?
Yeah.
So he's not fighting. He's fleeing. And that brings me actually to a much bigger idea throughout the movie that like so much of the film, yeah, he has his occasional gunfight, but he's just trying to survive. It is 1v12 or whatever it is. He's the first guy he kills is an accident. He's picking off guys one by one because if you're gonna get out of this alive, he even asks jokingly, but he asked Gruber at one point, not unless you want to open the front door for me. He was like, you just let me go. So there's no way he's getting out of this without running over glass, shooting a couple guys in the face. Like he's gonna have to.
Like he's at that point of I've already done all this stuff. I might as well keep going.
What you're actually describing.
I'm kind of comparing it as how he was acting in the very beginning of the movie, like, oh Lord.
Oh, because there is that he's, and Breihan at some point too says he's an asshole, and then when terror shows up, he becomes his best self, for sure. But you've kind of lit upon another idea, which is interesting, and I think this is kind of what Braxton was describing. When you put it like this, would any of us run over glass barefoot? No. But if a couple German guys with guns were coming for you,
You wouldn't have choice.
it's not a choice. It's not a choice.
Like if you don't run across and you don't take that chance, you're pretty much giving up that one.
Exactly. So that's not really a choice. He's forced to run over the glass. He's forced to do damn near everything he does in the movie, right? Like I know he has ideas. I know he figured, but he's put in that position. Just like, at no point does he go, I'm gonna go save everybody. That's the people on the outside. Deputy Chief Dwayne Johnson, or whatever his fucking name is constantly making decisions that we know are the wrong ones. And he has to do something, but he has options. McClane doesn't. That's interesting.
He has to like pretty much do run across glass or die.
Well, and that gets me back to, for those of you who play video games, who waste your time with things you like to do, because you're nice. You're nice. I'm not disputing that. It's okay. I'm giving you a hard time. In those games, I can think of a couple where you have to do a thing as the main character, and the whole time you're like, this is fucking stupid. And you're like, oh, fuck, I feel that for sure. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. Because that's how the game is built. But if we're talking about video game like purity, you got to beat the level, you got to do how it was designed. As soon as Hans is like, shoot the glass, like he's creating the level. He's making that happen. So we have an absence of choice here for the hero, by the way. Like, it's a hard thing to do, but it's not a choice. He does not have a choice. Let's think about this for 1 second. We've talked about this throughout the semester, actually, with every text we've looked at, actually. You don't have a choice, really. What else don't you have?
I want to say options, but I don't think that's the right word. Control.
You don't have free will. Good. Which means you don't have what? People who make choices, people who have free will have what? Yes. McLean doesn't have any power. He slowly, you could argue, maybe, is trying to get it, right? But for most of the movie, this scene in particular, power does he really have? None. If they find him, the guys with the guns, which means they're the guys with the power. Again, the movie ends. That's it. And again, now we have another body paragraph where I think we're very much redefining a hero. He's powerless. Kind of like us? Potentially. And I say that, like, whether or not you think you're powerless in the everyday life, I'm not saying, but like, if you were in a similar situation, I think we would all feel pretty powerless. There's always that one dude who's like, not me. But like, apart from that guy who's like trained or whatever, the rest of us would feel a little bit not sure what to do, or I mean, if guys walked in here with guns, we'd be pretty upset. I agree, right? So it's this idea that we can relate, but again, it's important how we're describing it. We can relate to this guy actually through a lack of power, or maybe you could argue he's gaining it through the film. It depends on how you read the movie. Does that make sense? I'm worried about the time now. What is it, like 12:10 or something? 12:02? Okay. Questions about anything we've talked about? Okay. Questions not about what we've talked about. Anything about the movie, about the assignment? Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, I meant to, you can use Breihan. You do not have to. So it's not like Jarvis. Jarvis you had to use, you can. I think many of you should. Again, it's just so much more approachable than the Galileo stuff. And with popular sources as well, the two dangers you gotta watch for. One, some of them are trash, okay? The only good thing about scholarly articles, 90% of the time, is that they've been reviewed by professors. So like people that, whether you agree with them or not, kind of know their shit, and they tend to not publish trash. Popular sources don't always have that gatekeeping mechanism. So you gotta watch for that. The other thing you gotta watch for, be mindful of, you're looking to engage with arguments. The reason you guys were, honestly, able to do such a good job pretty quickly, get to different scenes, and I'm sure some of you that like didn't raise your hand had ideas too, is because there's an argument being made here. And there's a couple different ways to talk about it, but that's an argument. That's an idea. You can engage with that stuff. Conversely, if you find an article that's all about how, again, 7 moments, die hard, there's almost never an idea. And if there is one, it's banal. Like, it's not worth your time. It's going to make your life harder. Okay? So anything like Breihan, I feel like this is a pretty good example. Right? But yes, you can use it. You're not required to. Good question. Other questions? Or thoughts or concerns? Okay. For next time, I believe you have 2 more bibs due. If you don't, or rather if you have not turned in the bibs yet for today, which I expect some of you, you should. You still can. I'm a little bit behind. We were trick-or-treating all night, so like I'm not going to get them looked at today. So you got time. Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, there are 2 due today.
2, and then 2 for next time.
Alright.
Maybe start with Breihan. Maybe start with this guy. Here's one.
Well, I already got like half of the
All right, anyway, I want to remind you too. I just thought of this as you asked. We are not writing bibs about Die Hard this time, right? That's what your proposal is for. That's what your proposal is for. There's more sources in this paper, so your 4 bibs they're meant to be 4 secondary sources. Now, if you did that by accident, you still get credit. But I'm saying.
Wait, you said we can use this on the article that you gave us?
It's not.
I'll just make sure.
It happens all. Any other questions or thoughts or concerns before I let you go?
So the 5th source would be Die Hard.
Yeah.
And the other 4 would be just separate secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
She's staying.
Anything else? I'll see you Wednesday. Thank you guys.